A guy at judo used everyone as his punching bag. Then he got paired with me. I've been doing judo since I was 11 years old. I'm 26 now, and I train at a small club in my city that's been open for over 30 years. The people there are good people. We have beginners who are still learning how to fall properly, and we have black belts who have been on the mat longer than I've been alive. The rule at our club has always been the same. You train hard, but you take care of your partner. If someone is smaller than you or less experienced, you adjust. You don't go full power on someone who doesn't know how to defend themselves yet. That's basic respect, and everyone at our club follows it. Then this guy Troy showed up. Troy walked in on a Tuesday night and told our coach Sendo that he had a brown belt from another gym across town and wanted to train somewhere more serious. Sendo welcomed him and told him to warm up with the rest of us. During warm-ups, Troy was already being loud. He was grunting through basic stretches and doing extra stuff nobody asked for, like handstand push-ups against the wall. A couple of the newer guys looked impressed. The rest of us just ignored it. Then we started randori, which is live sparring, and everything changed. Sendo paired Troy with a white belt named Felix, who had been training for about 4 months. Felix was maybe 150 pounds and still learning basic grips. Troy grabbed him like he owed him money. He yanked Felix around by the collar and sleeve, threw him hard 3 times in a row without giving him a chance to recover, and then pinned him on the ground with way more pressure than necessary. Felix tapped, and Troy held on for an extra 2 seconds before letting go. Felix got up, rubbing his shoulder, and didn't say anything. Sendo watched but didn't step in because, technically, nothing Troy did was illegal. It was just wrong. Next round, Troy got paired with another lower belt named Kyo, who was about 16 and weighed maybe 130. Troy threw him so hard Kyo's back slapped the mat, and you could hear the air leave his body. Kyo sat out the next round. Troy looked around the room like he was proud of himself. He was smiling. I want people to understand that. He wasn't just going hard. He was enjoying it. He wanted to hurt people who couldn't fight back, and he wanted everyone to see him do it. Third round, Sendo paired Troy with a blue belt named Davey, who had about 2 years of experience. Davey was solid for his level, and he actually tried to fight back. Troy stuffed every attempt Davey made and then cranked an armbar so fast Davey barely had time to tap. Davey's elbow was sore for a week after that. Troy got up and bowed like he was honoring the tradition, but there was nothing respectful about it. He was performing. Between rounds, Troy would talk. He told people they needed to relax and that this was how real judo worked. He told Felix his break falls were sloppy and that's why it hurt. He told Kyo he needed to toughen up if he wanted to last in this sport. He told Davi nice try like he was complimenting a child who just learned to tie his shoes. Nobody said anything back because Troy was big. He was probably 210 and he clearly had training. He knew what he was doing, which made it worse. He wasn't out of control. He was choosing to go that hard on people who had no way to match him. Fourth round, Sendo looked at me and said, "You're up. I've been doing this for 15 years. I competed through high school and college. I've trained in Japan twice. I have a second-degree black belt and I outweigh Troy by about 5 pounds." Sendo knew exactly what he was doing when he made that pairing. I bowed and stepped on the mat. Troy grabbed my collar immediately and tried to snap me down. I didn't move. He pulled again harder and I posted my hand on his chest and straightened up. He tried a foot sweep and I stepped over it like it wasn't there. He tried an inside trip and I blocked it and circled out. For the first minute, I didn't attack. I just shut down everything he threw at me. His face changed. The smile went away. He started breathing harder and gripping tighter. He was used to people folding and I wasn't folding. Then I started working. I hit a basic hip throw that I've drilled 10,000 times and put him flat on his back. He hit the mat hard and I could tell it surprised him. He got up fast and came at me aggressive. I let him charge in and hit a drop shoulder throw that flipped him over my back. He landed heavy. He got up slower that time. We reset and I could see him thinking. He tried to grab my leg, which isn't even legal in judo competition, and I sprawled and snapped him down to the mat face first. Sendo didn't say a word. Troy stood up and shot in on me again, and I caught him in a standing choke. Not hard enough to put him out, but tight enough that he had to tap. He tapped fast, faster than any of the people he'd been throwing around all night. We reset one more time and I threw him with the same throw he used on Felix. Same grip, same angle, same power. The difference was Troy knew how to fall so he wasn't hurt, but he felt it. He felt exactly what he'd been doing to everyone else all night, except now it was coming from someone who could actually match him. Sendo called time. Troy walked off the mat and sat against the wall. He didn't talk to anyone for the rest of the night. He came back the following Tuesday. I honestly didn't think he would. Most guys who get humbled like that either never return or they come back with a different attitude. Troy came back with the same attitude and a shorter fuse. He walked in like nothing happened. Same loud warm-up, same unnecessary extras, same energy that said, "I'm the most important person on this mat and everyone else is here for my benefit." But I noticed something different this time. He avoided looking at me. Not once during warm-ups did he glance in my direction. He talked to the newer guys. He stretched near the far wall. He positioned himself on the opposite side of the room from where I was drilling. He knew where I was at all times, and he made sure he was somewhere else. During technique drilling before randori, he partnered with a white belt named Ose, who had started about 3 months ago. Ose was tall and lanky and still figuring out how to use his frame. The drill was a basic shoulder throw entry. You grip up, turn in, load your partner on your hip, and set them down gently. It's a repetition drill. Nobody should be hitting the mat hard because the whole point is to practice the motion, not the impact. Troy threw Ose hard on every single repetition. Not throw and control hard, throw and punish hard. Ose's body was hitting the mat with a sound that didn't belong in a technique drill. The guys drilling next to them noticed. Ose kept getting up without complaining because he was new and didn't know the drill wasn't supposed to feel like that. He thought this was normal. That's the part that made me angry. Ose didn't have enough experience to know he was being abused. He thought judo was supposed to hurt this much, and Troy was letting him believe that because it served him. Sendo started pairing people for randori. Troy got paired with a green belt named Henrik, who had been training about a year and a half. Henrik was stocky and strong, but still developing his technique. Troy threw Henrik 3 times in 4 minutes. Each throw was harder than it needed to be. Each time Henrik hit the mat, Troy stood over him a beat too long before resetting. Not long enough to draw a call from Sendo, just long enough to make a point. When the round ended, Troy patted Henrik on the back and said, "Good work." Henrik nodded and walked away rubbing grabbing his neck. Second round, Troy got paired with a woman named Ren, who trained with us on Tuesdays. Ren was a green belt, maybe 125 pounds, and one of the most technical grapplers in the club. She had good instincts and fast hands, and she trained seriously. Troy matched with her and immediately started muscling through every exchange. He wasn't using technique, he was using size. He ragdolled her through a throw that had no setup and no skill behind it. Just brute force applied to someone 60 pounds lighter than him. Ren got up and kept going because Ren doesn't quit, but I could see it in her face. She wasn't learning anything. She was surviving. Troy threw her twice more before the round ended, each time louder than the last. When Sendo called time, Troy said to Ren, "You've got good base," like he was giving her a coaching tip she hadn't asked for. Ren said nothing. She walked to the water fountain and stood there for a while longer than she needed to. I was standing at the edge of the mat watching. Troy saw me watching and looked away. That's when I understood the pattern. Troy wasn't going to change. He had been embarrassed by me, and his response was not to rethink his approach. His response was to avoid the person who embarrassed him and continue punishing everyone who couldn't. He was a predator, and predators don't stop hunting. They just learn which animals to avoid. I went to Sendo after class. I told him Troy was still going too hard on the lower belts. Sendo said he was aware. He said he had been watching closely and that Troy was staying inside the technical rules even if he was violating the spirit of them. He said he would keep pairing Troy with higher belts when possible, but that the roster didn't always allow it. Some nights we only had 2 or 3 experienced guys and 10 beginners. You couldn't always match experience levels evenly. I asked Sendo if he could just talk to Troy, tell him to dial it back. Sendo said he had. After the previous class, he had pulled Troy aside and told him the culture of the club was control and respect, and that going full competition intensity on white belts wasn't acceptable. He said Troy had nodded and said he understood. He said Troy had apologized and said he would be more careful. And then he came back the next week and did the exact same thing. That's the problem with guys like Troy. They know the right words. They know what an apology sounds like and what compliance looks like, and they perform both perfectly while changing absolutely nothing. Troy was fluent in the language of accountability without ever actually being accountable. The third week, Troy was paired with Felix again. Felix had made real progress in the month since Troy first threw him around. He had better grips, better posture, and he wasn't flinching anymore before contact. He had been coming to extra open mat sessions on Saturday mornings and drilling with Davi and Henrik. I had worked with him twice on grip fighting and he had picked it up fast. I was proud of Felix. He was putting in the work and it showed. Troy grabbed Felix and within 30 seconds had thrown him hard enough that Felix's head bounced off the mat, not dangerously. The mat was thick, but hard enough that Felix lay there for a moment before getting up. Sendo blew his whistle and stopped the round. He walked over and asked Felix if he was okay. Felix said he was fine. He said it the way people say fine when they're not fine, but they don't want to make a situation bigger than it already is. Sendo looked at Troy and said, "Control." One word. Troy nodded. They reset. 30 seconds later, Troy threw Felix again. Same intensity, same result. Felix hit the mat and this time he stayed down for a few seconds longer. His hands were flat on the mat beside him and he was staring at the ceiling. Not injured, just deciding if he wanted to keep getting up. Kyo, who was watching from the side, shook his head. Davi crossed his arms. Ren, who was sitting out that round, stood up from the bench. The mood on the mat shifted. Everyone could feel it. This wasn't just Troy going hard. This was Troy retaliating. Felix had survived their first encounter and had come back and improved, and Troy was punishing him for it. He was punishing Felix for having the audacity to get better at the thing Troy used to dominate him. Because that's what bullies do when their targets stop being easy. They don't back off. They escalate. Troy needed Felix to stay small, because Felix staying small was the only thing that made Troy feel big. Sendo stopped the round early and sent Felix to get water. He pulled Troy aside and spoke to him quietly for about 2 minutes. I couldn't hear what was said, but I could see Troy's face. He was nodding, agreeable, compliant. That same performance he always gave when authority addressed him. "Yes, coach. Understood, coach. Won't happen again, coach." The next round, Sendo paired Troy with me. Troy's jaw tightened. He stepped onto the mat and gripped up, and I could feel it in his hands immediately. He was angry. Not at me specifically. He was angry because he had been corrected in front of people, and now he was being put in front of the one person who could make him feel the way he made everyone else feel. His grips were tighter than they needed to be. He was squeezing the collar like he was trying to choke the fabric itself. I could feel the tension running through his forearms and into his shoulders. He was burning energy before we even started moving. We went for 5 minutes. I threw him 4 times. Each throw was clean and controlled because that's how you're supposed to do it. I didn't slam him. I didn't hold submissions longer than necessary. I didn't stand over him or talk after each exchange. I just put him on the ground and let him get up and put him on the ground again. The first throw was a standard Osoto Gari, a big outside reap that swept his leg out from under him. He landed on his back and slapped the mat properly because he does know how to fall when he's the one falling. The second was a Sasai Tsurekomi Ashi, a propping foot throw where I lifted and rotated him over my lead foot. He scrambled up from that one faster because it embarrassed him more. The third was a Ko Uchi Gari that dumped him straight down when he overcommitted to a grip change. He didn't see it coming and sat on the mat for a moment before standing. On the fourth throw, I used an Uchi Mata that I set up with a collar grip and a step that I know he didn't see coming because his feet left the mat completely and he rotated in the air before landing flat. It was a beautiful throw. The kind of throw that in competition would score ippon and end the match instantly. The kind of throw you dream about hitting when you're a kid watching highlight reels. I've been drilling that Uchi Mata since I was 14 years old and I have never once used it to hurt someone. I used it on Troy the same way I would use it on any training partner. Full commitment, full technique, full control on the landing. He hit the mat and I was already reaching down to help him up before he finished sliding. That's the difference. That's the entire difference between what Troy does and what judo is supposed to be. You can throw someone with everything you have and still take care of them on the way down. Troy lay on the mat for a moment after that one. Not because he was hurt, because he was processing. He was processing the fact that he was outclassed and that no amount of aggression was going to close the gap between us. 15 years of mat time isn't something you overcome with anger. You overcome it with 15 years of your own. And Troy had spent his years learning how to overpower people instead of how to outwork them. Sendo called time. Troy sat against against the wall again. Same spot as last week. Same silence. But this time, something else happened. Felix walked over to me and asked me how I set up that last throw. He wanted to learn it. Kyo came over too. Then Henrik. Within 5 minutes, I had 4 lower belts standing around me asking questions about technique, and Troy was sitting alone against the wall watching it happen. Nobody went to talk to Troy. Nobody asked him for advice even though he was technically a brown belt with years of experience. Because experience without respect is just weight on a mat. It doesn't teach anyone anything except how to be afraid. The 4th week, Troy didn't show up. The 5th week, he didn't show up either. On the 6th week, I asked Sendo if Troy had quit. Sendo said he didn't know. He said Troy hadn't called or texted. He just stopped coming. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. About 2 months later, I got a message from a friend named Jonah who trained at a gym on the other side of the city. He said there was a new guy at their club who had a brown belt and was going way too hard on the beginners. He said the guy had hurt a 16-year-old during randori, and the kid's parents were threatening to pull him from the program. The kid had come home with a swollen elbow and told his parents that a new guy had cranked a submission and he didn't have time to tap. The parents showed up at the gym the next day and told the coach that if it happened again, they were filing a complaint with the national governing body. Jonah said the guy's name was Troy, same approach, different gym, different set of people who couldn't defend themselves. He hadn't learned anything. He had just moved to a place where nobody knew what he was yet. That's what guys like Troy do. They burn through communities. They walk into a new space, establish dominance over the people who can't stop them, get confronted or corrected or called out, and then move on to the next space where they can start the cycle over. They don't change because changing would require them to sit with the uncomfortable truth that strength without control isn't strength at all. It's just violence with a belt on. I called Jonah and told him everything. I told him about Felix and Kyo and Davi and Ose and Ren. I told him about the extra seconds on the pin and the armbar that left Davi's elbow sore for a week. I told him about the head bounce on the mat and the way Troy would bow after every act of cruelty, like he was honoring the sport he was actively disrespecting. I told him about how Sendo had talked to Troy twice, and Troy had nodded and apologized and changed nothing. I told him about the technique drill where Troy was slamming a 3-month white belt during a repetition exercise that wasn't supposed to involve any impact at all. Jonah thanked me and said he would talk to his coach. He said the coach had been on the fence about whether Troy was a problem or just intense. He said my account would settle it. A week later, Jonah messaged me again. He said Troy had been asked to leave their gym, not banned exactly, just told that the club wasn't the right fit for him, and that he should look for a competition-focused environment where his intensity would be more appropriate. That's the polite way of saying you go too hard on people, and we don't want you here, but we're not going to make a scene about it. The kid with the swollen elbow stayed in the program. His parents calmed down after the coach explained what had been done. The kid is still training. Troy left. Jonah said he didn't argue. He just packed his bag and walked out. No scene, no confrontation, just a guy with a brown belt and nowhere to train because every gym he went to eventually figured out what he was. I told Sendo about all of this. He nodded and said he wasn't surprised. He said guys like Troy rotated through gyms their whole lives because they never figured out that the mat was supposed to teach them something about themselves, not just give them a place to dominate people who were still learning. He said the best judoka he ever trained under was a 70-year-old man in Osaka who weighed 140 pounds and could throw anyone in the room but chose not to because he didn't need to prove it. He said that man had more power in his restraint than Troy had in his entire body. That stuck with me. Felix got his yellow belt 2 months later. He earned it through consistent training and steady improvement and zero shortcuts. He hadn't missed a single class since Troy left. Not one Tuesday, not one Thursday, not one Saturday open mat. On the night of his promotion, Sendo had him demonstrate a throw for the class. Felix picked the hip throw. The same basic hip throw I had used on Troy that first night. The same throw I taught Felix during one of our Saturday sessions where I broke it down into 3 steps and made him drill each step 50 times before putting them together. He executed it cleanly on Henrik and everyone on the mat clapped. Not because it was spectacular, because it was correct. Clean entry, controlled finish, immediate check on his partner afterward. Felix helped Henrik up and they bowed to each other and both of them were smiling. That's judo. That's what the mat is supposed to look like. 2 people making each other better and being grateful for the opportunity. Kyo is still training. He's a yellow belt now too, and he's starting to develop a nasty foot sweep that catches people off guard regularly. Davi's elbow healed fully and he just tested for his next belt. Henrik stopped rubbing his neck after the throws stopped being punishing and started being genuinely educational. The gym is the same as it was before Troy showed up. Good people training hard and taking care of each other. Nobody talks about Troy. His name comes up occasionally when a new face walks in and someone jokes about checking their attitude at the door, but mostly he's forgotten. Just another guy who mistook the mat for a place to feel powerful instead of a place to become something better. I still train every Tuesday and Thursday. I still drill the same throws I've been drilling since I was 11. Last week, a brand new white belt showed up. Couldn't have been older than 15. He was nervous and skinny and had no idea how to tie his belt properly. Sendo paired him with me for his first round of light sparring. I gripped up gently and showed him the basic hip throw and let him try it on me 3 times. On the 3rd attempt, he actually got my feet off the ground. His face lit up. He looked at me and said, "Was that right?" I told him it was perfect. Then I fell properly so he could feel what a clean throw was supposed to look like from the throwing end. He tried it again and got it cleaner. Sendo watched from the corner with his arms crossed and nodded once. That nod meant more than any trophy I've ever won.